Welcome back to the Wednesday Audit on Equinox Ledger, Episode 3. Every week we take the most viral finance video uploaded in the last 7 days, dissect it frame by frame, expose the truth behind the hype, and connect it to the quiet 2026 economic reset that's already underway. Today, we are auditing the video that's blowing up right now. ACCRA RESET, the Davos Convening, uploaded just days ago and already at over 100k views. Buckle up. This one goes deep into Davos global finance elites and what they're really planning for your money by 2026. If you're done being lied to about 2026, subscribe now and hit notifications. We drop every Wednesday. Today's audit is a deep dive into a 3-hour marathon of high-level coordination. The video uploaded by the official Africa Com team captures a convening in the chilly heights of Davos. It is currently sitting at over 109,000 views and the velocity is climbing. Why is it viral? Because it features the acolytes and champions of a new global order. We see the heads of the IMF-adjacent financial institutions, the World Bank's pandemic fund, and various presidents mapping out what they call the ACCRA Reset. They claim they are remodeling development after 60 years of failure. But the real topics are global reset signals, the operating logic of a post-dependency world, and the final moves toward a 2026 economic lockdown. This isn't just a talk shop. It's a blueprint for the discipline of delivery. The core audit, dissecting the signals. The audit begins with Samoa Zubaru, CEO of the Africa Finance Corporation. He drops a staggering figure that should make every saver in the world shiver. He admits Africa is not capital scarce, it is capital trapped. He identifies a massive $4 trillion pool of domestic capital just waiting to be unlocked. Where is this money exactly? Zubaru spells it out. $500 billion in pension funds, $300 billion in insurance firms, $180 billion in sovereign funds. Here's the truth behind the PR fluff. When they talk about mobilizing capital, they are talking about your retirement. Zubaru notes that commercial banks are heavily regulated, so they can't easily touch that money for their development schemes. Their solution? Regulatory reforms to ensure your pension flows into infrastructure bonds and private equity corridors. They are intentionally building the future for the savers by making sure those savers have no choice but to fund the reset. Next, we see a chilling framing of global medicine. The video describes health as not a side issue, but a wedge, a bellwether, and a radar. Why use medical terminology for a financial reset? Because it allows them to re-architect global health governance. Dr. Tedros of the WHO is in the room citing a projected 2025 mortality increase. The audit. They are using the threat of a 2025 crisis to justify a total merger of health and finance. They want to transition from charity to co-investment. This means using healthy populations to fund artificial intelligence and critical minerals through sovereign prosperity spheres. If you want to stay safe and healthy in 2026, you will have to buy into their new digital financial architecture. The Vice President of Nigeria takes the stage and exposes the new currency of the reset, Trust and Digital Public Infrastructure (DPI). He explicitly states that the answer to global labor pressures is not physical migration, but digital service export. They are promoting a global digital skills passport. The audit. This isn't about jobs, it's about a strategic reserve of human capital. They want to train 3 million technical talents to serve as a scalable extension of Fortune 500 workforces. This passport is the digital leash. By 2026, your ability to earn a living will be tied to this digital handshake between nations. You will be an asset in a sovereign prosperity sphere, tracked and managed by the same entities that manage the capital corridors. The Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, James Marape, finally says the quiet part out loud. He asks what counts as a visible win by the end of 2026. His demand? Absolute policy clarity. In elite speak, clarity means the laws are locked in. He insists that these policies must be intergenerational, not just for one political cycle. This is the confirmation of the 2026 reset timeline. They are racing to ensure that by the end of 2026, the trapping of wealth and the new operating logic are irreversible. Comment below. Is Davos planning your future? Type yes or no. I read them all. We are now dissecting the final hour of the ACCRA Reset, the Davos Convening. The parts where the masks slip and the architects of the 2026 reset show their hand. They talk about sovereignty, but they define it as a discipline of delivery. They don't want freedom. They want execution. In their own words, if you cannot execute, you cannot be sovereign. This is the new global rulebook. let's finish the audit. Core audit continued. The harvest and the passport. In this segment, the narration becomes almost religious. They call themselves the acolytes and champions of the reset agenda. They aren't just changing a few policies. They are rebuilding the very operating logic of global cooperation. The audit. What is this operating logic? It's the creation of sovereign prosperity spheres. These are described as minimally viable geoeconomic platforms where nations coordinate policy and investment. In plain English, they are carving the world into economic zones where your money, your labor, and your resources are coordinated by a central platform. They claim this moves us from possibility to transformation, but for the middle class, it's a move from ownership to participation. We return to the most dangerous part of the video, the plan for your savings. Samoa Zubaru of the Africa Finance Corporation is explicit. He notes that commercial banks are too heavily regulated to fund their grand reset. The audit, since they can't easily use the banks, they are targeting the capital trapped in pension funds and insurance firms. He identifies 500 billion in African pension funds and 300 billion in insurance firms. He openly advocates for regulatory reforms to force these funds into infrastructure bonds and private equity. Think about that. They want to take the stable money you've saved for decades and pool it into high-risk corridors. They call this intentionally building the future for the savers. I call it a forced wealth transfer. They are de-risking their projects using your retirement as the collateral. The Vice President of Nigeria takes the stage to talk about the youth bulge. He doesn't see people. He sees a strategic reserve. He claims the answer to the labor crisis is digital service export. The audit. They are launching a 3 million technical talent initiative to create a global digital skills passport. They want to train an entire generation of developers and AI specialists to serve as a cost-efficient and scalable extension of the Fortune 500 workforce. They aren't building a local economy. They are building a digital bridge where you stay in your home country but work as a remote tenant for a company in Berlin or Silicon Valley. And here's the kicker. They say trust is the new currency. They are domesticating data protection acts to align with global protocols. Your digital public infrastructure, DPI, is the leash. If you want to work, you need the passport. If you want the passport, you obey the operating logic. James Marape, the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, is the most honest man in the room. He asks what counts as a visible win by the end of 2026. He demands absolute policy clarity. He says these policies must be intergenerational, meaning they cannot be changed by the next election. The audit. This is the death of democracy. When policies are made irreversible and intergenerational through international treaties rather than national laws, the voter is removed from the equation. They are trapping the wealth and ensuring the residuals of natural resources are distributed according to their team-based engagements. Comment below. Is Davos planning your future? Type yes or no. I read them all. Fact versus fiction, the Davos dialect. Let's look at what they say versus what the sources actually reveal. They say, sovereignty is dignity. The truth. Sovereignty is defined in the video as the practical capacities to implement at scale. If a nation doesn't have the will to action or the execution, their sovereignty is fragmented, and they become bargaining chips. In the Davos 2026 world, sovereignty is a reward for obedience. They say, we are not capital scarce, we are capital trapped. The truth. This is a code for unprotected assets. The 4 trillion they've identified in pensions and insurance is the last frontier of wealth they haven't fully pooled into their global capital corridors. They are looking for ways to anchor balance sheets by merging multilateral institutions into pan-African structures that can be traded and de-risked for global investors. They say, health is a human right. The truth. The video explicitly calls health a wedge and a radar to test if sovereignty is real. They are using the 2025 mortality increase projection as a justification to re-architect global health governance. They want to move from charity to co-investment. This means your health data and your access to care will be the testbed for how they mobilize capital. What they're hiding. They are suspiciously quiet about middle-class savings. They talk about savers in the context of intentionally building their future, but they never mention the right to opt out. They talk about fragmentation as a destabilizing structural condition. In ledger terms, they hate local banks, local control, and local cash because they can't scale it. The bigger picture. The 2026 connection. Now let's connect this to the Equinox Ledger series. In episode 1, we talked about the Venezuela resource raid. In this Davos video, they talk about critical minerals value optimization. It's the same plan. They want to ensure that even when the inputs come from our soil, the value is captured by these new sovereign prosperity spheres. In episode 2, we expose the $21 trillion secret, the missing money from the global financial system. Notice how Samoa Zubaru talks about the $4 trillion in trapped domestic capital. They are looking to re-anchor that $21 trillion by using your pensions as a balance sheet anchor. This is the BlackRock Aladdin play. By creating interoperable standards and digital handshakes between nations, they are building a global delivery machine that Aladdin can monitor and manage in real time. The end of savings is not a theory. It is the stated goal of the ACCRA RESET. They want to move your money from regulated banks into infrastructure private equity. By 2026, when they achieve their absolute policy clarity, the door will be locked. Truth level, 6-10 red pills. This isn't a 10-10 because they are still using the language of empowerment and dignity to hide the discipline. But it's a solid 6 because for the first time they are being honest about the 2026 deadline and the pension harvest. This video matters now because the acolytes of the reset are no longer just theorizing in dark rooms. They are launching a high-level panel and re-architecting global governance. They are telling you to your face, your pension is trapped capital, and they are coming to unlock it. Share this with someone still trusting banks. They need to know about the discipline of delivery. Like, subscribe to Equinox Ledger and join the Ledger army. We expose what they hide. The system is resetting. The triple dependency is the trap. The 2026 economic lockdown is the goal. I'm your host. The audit is closed. See you next Wednesday. Don't get trapped.